ritual meets automotive intelligence. Whether you're grabbing coffee or tea before the day starts, we've got something worth your time. This is Auto Intelligence, produced by Agentic. New episodes every Tuesday.
And we're seeing something happening right now in automotive retail that, well, it's not subtle. We're 3 months into 2026, and the data is telling a story that's pretty hard to ignore.
Before we dive in, thank you to everyone listening. The show's grown faster than we expected, and the conversations you're starting because of these episodes. That's exactly why we do this. So let's get into it. 2026 is being called the first true AI operations year for automotive dealerships. And that's not marketing language. That's what's actually happening on the ground.
Here's the number that caught my attention. 48% of dealerships were using AI in some capacity in 2025. That's already significant. But projections show adoption crossing 70% by the end of this year. That's not gradual adoption. That's a threshold crossing.
And 76% of dealers are increasing their AI budgets in 2026. Not testing, not piloting, increasing. But before we make this sound like a universal success story, we need to talk about what's actually working versus what's failing, because there's a massive gap between having AI and having AI that works.
Right, and that's the conversation that needs to happen. Executive adoption hits 70%. Dealer principals and GMs are using AI tools daily. But here's what the numbers don't tell you. A significant portion of those deployments are struggling. Industry analysts are talking about the great dealer tech collapse, vendors that promised transformation but couldn't deliver operational results.
So what changed? Let's start with the forcing function, because the economics are what made this non-optional. Front-end gross collapsed 52% year over year. December numbers showed dealers making $279 per vehicle on the front end. That's pre-pandemic territory, and it's not coming back.
Let's put that in context. During the pandemic inventory shortage, dealers were making well over $500 per vehicle on the front end, sometimes over $1,000. That era conditioned dealerships to operate as order takers. Scarcity drove profitability. By 2026, that model collapsed, inventory normalized, but the consumer base fractured.
Because the market itself bifurcated. Average transaction prices are hovering near $50,000. Nearly 2/3 of consumers say new cars are unaffordable. 31.5% of trade-ins carry negative equity. You've got buyers stretching loans to 84 months, some to 96 months. Nearly 1 in 5 consumers is carrying monthly payments exceeding $1,000.
So you have this situation where the new vehicle market effectively became luxury territory. Middle-income buyers are either priced out entirely or forced into dangerous loan-to-value ratios. And dealers are caught in the middle, trying to move metal in a low-velocity environment where every deal requires aggressive margin sacrifice or deep OEM incentives.
And while front-end margins were collapsing, the cost structure didn't adjust. Expenses are outpacing gross. Repair costs increased more than 33% over the past 4 years. The industry faces a shortage of 470,000 technicians by 2028, which is driving labor costs up. Marketing costs are consuming up to 70% of revenue for aggressive growth plans. Sales commissions represent another 30% of total revenue.
That cost structure worked when vehicle margins were healthy. In 2026, it's economically irrational. And this is what forced dealerships to AI, not innovation, survival. But here's where the learning starts. Dealerships that rushed into AI thinking it was plug and play are failing. Hard?
Yeah, this is critical. Industry reports show that out-of-the-box AI implementations are failing at the dealership level. Dealers that assumed AI was a simple software installation, buy it, turn it on, watch the magic happen, experienced poor results, customer complaints, dropped leads, AI agents giving incorrect information.
Because here's what nobody told them. You have to treat AI like a new employee. It requires extensive onboarding. One successful implementation involved configuring up to 150 distinct operational parameters. You're teaching the AI your specific inventory philosophy, your pricing strategy, your service department protocols, your local market nuances.
And this connects to the data quality problem. If your CRM has duplicate customer records, the same person listed 3 different ways across your systems, your AI is going to inherit that mess. Garbage in, garbage out. The dealerships seeing transformational results, they spent months cleaning data before deploying AI.
Let's talk about what's actually working, because there are clear patterns. The BDC transformation is real, but it's not universal. Dealerships using AI voice agents report handling 100% of inbound calls, but the key word is handling. Early implementations had high answer rates but low resolution rates. The AI answered the phone but couldn't actually help the customer.
Right, by 2026, the successful deployments evolved. AI voice agents that access unified data, service history, vehicle telemetry, real-time bay capacity, those are booking appointments in under 2 minutes. Hyundai of St. Augustine is the example everyone cites. 130 additional service appointments monthly, 30 hours per week saved, $30,000 additional monthly revenue.
But here's the learning. They didn't achieve that day one. They spent months training the AI on their specific workflows. They had humans monitoring every interaction initially. They iterated based on failure points. The success came from treating it like organizational change management, not software deployment.
And the metrics around BDC, cost reductions, 33% lower operating costs, 12 to 15 hours saved weekly, those are accurate, but they come with a caveat. At a SoTuCon 2025, multiple presentations leaned on what attendees called a trust me bro narrative about time savings. Vendors promised massive efficiency gains but didn't provide frameworks for how to reallocate that displaced staff time.
Which created a morale problem at some dealerships. BDC staff saw AI coming in and thought, am I getting replaced? When leadership didn't have a clear answer about what those humans would do with their reclaimed time, you got resistance. The successful dealerships had that conversation up front. AI handles Tier 1 interactions, humans shift to complex relationship management and high-value consultative selling.
Service departments provide another example of good implementation versus bad. The promise is predictive maintenance. AI analyzing connected vehicle telemetry to identify service needs before failure. And that's happening, but only at dealerships with clean data feeds and proper integration between vehicle telematics, DMS, parts inventory, and the service scheduler.
Dealerships that bolted on a predictive maintenance tool without integrating it into their core workflow. The AI would recommend service, but the service advisor couldn't see that recommendation when the customer called, or the parts department didn't know to stock the recommended part. Or the customer got 3 separate communications, one from the AI, one from the service department, one from the OEM's connected vehicle system, creating confusion instead of clarity.
Fixed operations became the financial core in 2026 because it represents 45 to 50% of gross profit, while front-end margins cratered. But here's what's interesting. The dealerships winning in service aren't the ones with the most AI features. They're the ones with the cleanest operational workflows where AI can actually execute.
Finance and insurance face the synthetic identity fraud crisis, $9.2 billion in losses in 2024. The threat was existential. Criminals using generative AI to create hyper-realistic fake IDs. 80 to 85% of identity fraud is now synthetic.
AI fraud detection systems like Dealertrack's Borrower Check detect over 90% of fraud that manual screening misses. That's the good. The bad? Some dealerships implemented fraud detection AI but didn't train their F&I staff on how to interpret the risk scores. The AI would flag an application as high risk, but the F&I manager would approve it anyway because they didn't understand the signal.
The learning, literacy before leverage. Your F&I team needs to understand what the AI is detecting and when to trust it versus when to investigate further. The dealerships with the lowest fraud rates in 2026 combined AI detection with human judgment. The AI does the initial screening at scale. Humans investigate flagged cases with domain expertise.
And here's where we need to talk about vendor positioning, because NADA 2026 was fascinating. The messaging shift was dramatic, but not all vendors could deliver on their promises.
Right, every vendor was suddenly claiming to be agentic, but there's a documented gap between marketing agentic AI and actually delivering systems capable of multi-step reasoning, cross-tool action, and on-the-fly adaptation. A chatbot that can answer FAQs is not agentic. An agent that can identify a service opportunity, check warranty eligibility, verify parts inventory, book the appointment, and update the CRM autonomously. That's agentic.
Impel AI positioned as the industry's only fully integrated AI operating system. FullPath launched automotive's first agentic CRM, emphasizing fully orchestrated multi-agent systems. LotLinks unveiled Revive to resurrect closed lost leads. The positioning was aggressive.
And some of it's legitimate. FullPath's data showing that over 20% of closed lost leads return to the dealership website within 45 days, that's real. Automating re-engagement when those leads show renewed intent is a genuine workflow gap that AI fills. But dealerships need to evaluate vendors on capability, not claims.
The DMS giants, CDK and Reynolds, took a different approach. They positioned AI as built-in rather than bolt-on, arguing that third-party vendors suffer from siloed data access. CDK launched their built-in customer data platform. Reynolds launched Ray, powered by Spark AI, their unified data layer.
And their argument has merit. If your AI agent can natively access the entire Reynolds retail management system, every transaction, every customer interaction, every service record, it's inherently more accurate than a third-party tool making API calls to pull fragmented data. But that creates vendor lock-in. You're betting your intelligence architecture on your DMS provider.
Which raises the strategic question every dealer needs to ask: who owns your intelligence layer? Because once you build your entire operation around a proprietary data ecosystem, migration becomes extraordinarily expensive. This isn't a software decision, it's a 10-year infrastructure decision.
You're listening to Auto Intelligence, produced by Agentic. And this question, who owns your intelligence architecture, is exactly why we built Agentic the way we did. Most platforms optimize tasks. Agentic coordinates organizations. We built more than 75 specialized automotive agents into a single enterprise intelligence system, but critically, it's designed to integrate across your existing stack.
Because the reality is most dealerships aren't going to rip out their DMS, and they're not replacing their CRM overnight. What they need is an intelligence layer that sits above those systems, orchestrates them, and maintains context across every handoff. When we talk about agents, we mean systems that reason across goals and execute multi-step workflows autonomously while preserving the investments you've already made.
And what 2026 is teaching the industry is that architecture matters more than features. A dealership with 3 AI tools that share a unified data layer outperforms a dealership with 15 disconnected AI features. The coordination is what compounds. This isn't AI layered onto workflows. It's intelligence embedded into operations.
From 2024 through 2025, foundations were built. 2026 is the year pilots become playbooks. We're working with a limited number of organizations this year to prove that coordination in real dealership operations, not demos, not pilots, but production environments, and codify what works into playbooks the industry will depend on. Because 2027 through 2029 bring ecosystem intelligence, and by 2030, agentic orchestration becomes the baseline. Now back to what's working and what's not.
Let's talk about the data architecture conversation, because this is where a lot of dealerships are getting stuck. The promise of data lakehouse architectures, combining data lake flexibility with data warehouse governance, is real. Mercedes-Benz Brazil built one that became the heart of the industrial operation.
But here's the bad news. Most dealerships don't have the internal expertise to architect a data lakehouse. They're trying to hire data engineers in a market where those skills are expensive and scarce. And the vendors selling lakehouse solutions often oversimplify the implementation complexity.
The learning? Start with data hygiene before you architect anything complex. AutoNation achieved 90% clean data with compliance consent logs. Some dealerships cut their unprotected data footprint by 93% through AI-powered risk scoring. Those aren't lakehouse projects, those are data governance projects, and they're prerequisites.
You can't build intelligent architecture on dirty data. And modern vehicles generate 1,000 to 3,000 data points per car with less than 1% immediately actionable. If you're trying to ingest all that telemetry without a strategy for what to do with it, you're just creating an expensive data swamp.
The OEM data ecosystem adds another layer of complexity. Ford Pro Intelligence for commercial fleets is sophisticated. Connected vehicles feeding telemetry into AI that pre-stages parts and generates diagnostics. Hyundai consolidated consumer apps into a unified interface. But then the FTC dropped the hammer on General Motors.
January 2026, the Federal Trade Commission finalized an order against GM and OnStar for collecting and selling geolocation and driving behavior data without adequate consent. 5-year ban on sharing that data with consumer reporting agencies, 20 years of mandatory affirmative express consent protocols.
That enforcement action changed everything, because every dealership accessing OEM-connected vehicle data now operates under the assumption that one misstep triggers existential regulatory risk, fines up to $50,120 per violation per day. That's not a slap on the wrist, that's a dealership closure.
And this connects to the compliance dimension that reshaped AI adoption in 2026. Dealerships are financial institutions under Graham-Leach-Bliley. The FTC's Safeguards Rule mandates strict data governance. The CDK ransomware attack in June 2024 made cybersecurity existential.
But the new risk in 2026 is shadow AI. Dealership employees innocently pasting customer credit applications into ChatGPT to summarize them. That's unencrypted, non-public personal information going to a third-party LLM. One employee doing that once creates catastrophic compliance exposure.
The good news, dealerships are getting serious about this. AI governance frameworks from organizations like STAR, Standards for Technology and Automotive Retail, provide practical guidance. The bad news, it requires constant training, monitoring, and enforcement. You can't just send a memo saying don't use ChatGPT with customer data and assume compliance.
The learning is that compliance isn't an IT problem. It's an organizational culture problem. The dealerships that are AI native ready treat data governance as a daily operational discipline, not an annual audit checkbox.
Let's talk about the stratification between single-point dealers and mega groups, because implementation looks completely different at different scales. Single-point dealers with $3,000 to $6,000 software budgets are focusing on quick wins, AI voice agents, automated lead scoring.
And they're smart to maintain human-in-the-loop workflows. Their competitive advantage is local relationships. They're using AI to give their experienced staff more time for high-value interactions, not to eliminate the human touch entirely. That's the right strategy for their context.
But some single-point dealers made the mistake of trying to implement enterprise-grade AI architectures they couldn't support. They bought sophisticated multi-agent platforms designed for dealer groups, then couldn't configure them properly because they lacked dedicated IT staff. The AI sat unused, and they wrote off the investment as AI doesn't work.
The learning? Match your AI ambition to your operational capacity. A properly configured AI voice agent that saves your BDC staff 15 hours a week delivers more value than a sophisticated but poorly implemented enterprise platform that nobody uses.
Mega dealer groups face the opposite problem. They have the capital $25,000 to $75,000 or more in enterprise software budgets. They have the IT staff, but they're trying to standardize AI workflows across multiple rooftops with different local market dynamics, different staff capabilities, different OEM relationships.
The successful mega groups built centralized AI governance with local flexibility. The intelligence architecture is unified. One data layer, one set of agents, standardized compliance protocols. But individual store managers have parameters they can adjust for local conditions without breaking the architecture.
And this is where the conversation gets interesting, because the question isn't just how do we implement AI, it's what kind of organization do we need to become to be AI native? And that's a much harder question.
Because AI native doesn't mean we have AI tools. It means your operational model assumes intelligent automation. Your job descriptions change. Your training programs change. Your performance metrics change. Your leadership team needs to understand what AI is doing, when to trust it, and when to override it.
We saw this pattern at NADA 2026. The dealerships that showed up asking which AI vendor should we buy got overwhelmed. The dealerships that showed up asking how do we re-architect our operation around intelligence had productive conversations. The mindset matters more than the technology.
And the bad news is, there's no shortcut to that organizational transformation. You can buy the best AI platform in the world, but if your staff doesn't understand it, doesn't trust it, or actively resists it, you just spent a lot of money on expensive software that generates minimal value.
The good news, the dealerships that make this transition report transformational results, not 10% improvements, 30 to 40% improvements in lead conversion, 33% reductions in BDC operating costs, AI that detects 90% of fraud manual systems miss. Those are real, measurable, sustainable competitive advantages.
But it requires months of foundational work: data cleaning, workflow mapping, staff training, configuration, and testing. The Hyundai of St. Augustine example we mentioned earlier, 130 additional appointments monthly, $30,000 in additional revenue, didn't happen overnight. That was a disciplined implementation process.
And this is the honest conversation the industry needs. AI is not magic. It's not plug and play. It's not a silver bullet that solves margin compression without organizational change. But when implemented properly with clean data, unified architecture, trained staff, and continuous iteration, it's the only economically viable path forward.
Because you can't grow your way out of margin compression when the market's flat. Cox Automotive projects 15.8 million units, down 2.4%. J.D. Power sees flat volumes. You can't cut your way out when you already face a 470,000 technician shortage. Operational efficiency through intelligent automation is the only strategy that works.
And the market consolidated around that realization in 2026. The vendor messaging at NADA, operating systems, agentic platforms, unified data layers, reflects dealerships demanding coordination, not accumulation. But the execution gap is real. Between the vendors promising transformation and dealerships achieving it lies months of hard operational work.
The dealerships that win aren't the ones with the most AI budget. They're the ones with the best organizational discipline, clean data, clear workflows, trained staff. Leadership that understands the difference between having AI and being AI native.
And here's what makes 2026 the pivot point. This is the year the industry transitions from experimentation to institutionalization. The organizations documenting what works, codifying playbooks, building compliance frameworks this year, those are the ones that scale ecosystem intelligence from 2027 through 2029.
By 2030, agentic orchestration will be the baseline, not cutting edge. The dealerships that started re-architecting in 2026 will have 5 years of compounding intelligence advantage. Because AI architecture isn't linear, it's exponential. Every new data source makes every other AI capability more accurate. The marginal cost of adding intelligence decreases as the architecture matures.
But that compounding advantage only accrues if you build the foundation correctly, rush the implementation, skip the data governance, ignore the training requirements. You get expensive failure. Do the foundational work, treat it like organizational transformation, iterate based on results. You get durable competitive advantage.
That's the learning from 2026. The success stories and the failure stories are both instructive. The difference isn't the technology. Every dealer has access to similar tools. The difference is organizational readiness, implementation discipline, and leadership commitment to genuine transformation rather than performative innovation.
This episode was produced by the team at Agentic. Learn more at autoagentic.ai. Special thanks to Barry Hillier, co-founder and CEO of Agentic, and the producer behind Auto Intelligence. If you have topic ideas, industry stories you think we should cover, especially if you've got implementation war stories, both successes and failures, reach out to Barry at autoagentic.ai.
Because the honest conversations about what's working and what's not, those are the conversations that actually help the industry. If today's episode gave you clarity on the gap between AI hype and AI reality, share it with someone wrestling with implementation decisions. The industry needs more honest dialogue about execution challenges, not just vendor promises.
And if you're in the middle of an AI implementation right now, whether it's going well or struggling, you're building the institutional knowledge the industry will depend on. Document what you're learning. Share what's working. Be honest about what's failing. That's how we collectively move from pilots to playbooks.
The dealerships that define automotive retail in 2030 are the ones having these hard conversations in 2026. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next Tuesday.